years back, Texas Monthly Magazine wrote an article about Texas music, and it said that Lubbock was the heart of it. All of it. The entire scene. Not Austin. Lubbock. And it's nice to see that recognized, and it's nice to see our community realize what they have, because it's incredible. My name is Scott Faris. I'm the owner of the Amusement Park Recording Studio here in Lubbock, Texas, and I produce records. When I first moved here, the music scene was very disjointed. It was after the time period where Joe Ely and all those guys were here, so that had kind of moved on. And it was actually kind of cutthroat and mean, to be honest with you. I kind of made it my mission to, at least for what small part of the world I could affect, to change that, to make it somewhere where everybody worked together. I certainly wasn't the only person that had that mindset, but that changed over the years, and now it's a very vibrant community that actually comes together and works together. You know, the Lubbock music scene is so incredible because there's this whole outlier mentality to it. You know, we live in a somewhat isolated environment. We're out in the middle of West Texas, and because of that, there's just something out here that causes people to create great art. It's blues, you know what I mean? Try something like that. That's the thing that makes it special, is there's a little piece of the old Wild West still in the middle of this place, and it happens to manifest in great music. Lubbock, one of the things that sets it apart as a music hub is the potential education for musicians here. The second verse for me again. Back in the day, I used to say that this was the greatest place in the world to hone your craft. It wasn't the greatest place in the world to practice your craft, but it was the greatest place in the world to hone it and learn it and then take it to the world. There's so many guitar players who came from Lubbock. They called Lubbock the Guitar Factory. You had Brandon Guitar Studio with David Brandon, who's one of the most famous classical guitar players in the world, right here teaching 300 students a week. South Plains College, and you had Texas Tech. You had a ton of individual guitar teachers like Steve Williams and Mike Caraway and all these really, really great players being mentors to younger players coming up and teaching them how to do it. So the ability for people to learn their craft here is pretty unparalleled. There's not very many places in the country that have what we have. You know, Lubbock has a long legacy of music. You go back to Buddy Holly in his era, the very first one internationally of note that came from here. And he was an outlier. People didn't like him. You know, a lot of folks just thought rock and roll was evil, you know, especially around here. They eventually came around, you know, and figured it out. You look at folks like, you know, Terry Allen and you look at Joe Ely and all those guys during that era, they were all outliers. They were outside of the norm for Lubbock, Texas, and that tradition continued. When I started touring, it was the late 90s, early 2000s, and during that time I was in a band called 100 Love Sonnets. There was another band called Spilling Poetry. Really looked up to those guys. They were a big influence on me. The rock and roll scene was really incredible, and then the kind of Americana thing came about with the Thrift Store Cowboys. They had a huge impact on the musicians coming after them. The Texas country scene kicked off. It obviously started with Pat Green way back in the day. You saw William Clark Green, you saw all these guys come up, then you saw Flatland Cavalry. You're gonna feel it each and every day. I'll go out of my way, above and beyond. Just a couple weeks ago, I got to watch them debut at the Grand Ole Opry, and for country music, you don't get any bigger than that. That legacy of artists here that affects the artists after them has spread to the rest of the world, and they're affecting musicians worldwide. It's really wonderful to get to watch that and you know, maybe play a really, really tiny, small, minute role in it.